Welcome back to the Viking Update Show, part of TalkNorth.com. John Krawczynski from The Athletic is here. I'm Jim Souhan from Star Tribune. Davide Rosso is our producer today. If you like this show, if you like any show at TalkNorth.com, please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. We want to thank Aquarius. We want to thank Twill and the Dining Galleria, that's Scott Dayton's shop, and TSR Injury Law. So, John, I wrote a piece today. We're talking here on Tuesday afternoon. My Tuesday morning piece was about the great young athletes in Minnesota, kind of comparing people like Anthony Edwards, Royce Lewis, Justin Jefferson, Nafisa Collier, Kirill Kaprizov, all 27 or younger, all great players, and asking some philosophical questions about their future. For the purposes of the Viking Update Show, let's ask it this way. Is Justin Jefferson the best athlete in town? Is he the best young athlete in town? Does he have the best future of all the great young athletes in town? What do you think?
I mean, yeah. As I think about this, like, it's a great question because I do think your premise is great in terms of the wealth of young, super athletic, really fun talents that we have on a lot of our teams in the Twin Cities, especially now that Royce Lewis just seems to hit every other pitch out over the fence for the Twins. It's incredible. Do I think, I honestly, maybe I'm biased, but I just think that Anthony Edwards is the best athlete. Like, he has the ability, Justin Jefferson is maybe the best receiver in the league. He can be a face of the league, but he is a receiver who is dependent in some way on the quarterback getting him the ball. And so that puts a something out of his control on the outcome of how far his career goes and how far the team goes. With Anthony Edwards, if you are the best player on the team, if you are a top 5, top 10 caliber player in the NBA, which I think he is fully capable of being, then a lot more of it is under your control. Like, you dictate how successful you're going to be. You dictate how far your team can go. And that's why I would give Edwards the edge over Jefferson, over Collier, who's been terrific for the Lynx this season, has been super fun. And even, over Lewis, where it's just harder for a baseball player to have singular baseball player to have an effect on the overall team outcome. So I'm giving it to Ant, but I think that Jefferson is just incredible. And now that he has this contract set up that he's going to be here a long time, it's an enormous, enormous building block for the Vikings going forward.
No doubt about it. In terms of individual statistics among the 5 athletes I mentioned, I think Jefferson has to get the nod because he's more receiving yards at this point in his career than anybody in NFL history for a league with so many great receivers, including Jerry Rice, Randy Moss. I think he's probably done the most individually. Anthony Edwards has taken his team to a Western Conference Finals. That is the greatest team achievement among the 5. Royce has had the craziest, wildest beginning to his career. Whenever he's healthy, he goes crazy, and he's hardly ever healthy. Collier, and when I did my rankings, I ended up giving it to Ant number 1, Jefferson 2, Royce 3 with a bullet. And then Collier, she's a great player. I don't know that she's got a chance to be one of the 3 best players in the WNBA. It's just going to be hard to crack that level. I don't know if she can be one of the 4 or 5 best players in franchise history because the franchise has had so many great players. And Kaprizov, he's kind of stuck on a mediocre team. And he's probably a top 20 player in the league. I just don't know how he's going to get into the top 10 if he doesn't have great playoff success. And I don't see this team having much playoff success.
Yeah, I like all of that logic. I mean, especially, looking at Collier, what I love about her is that she, I think, has improved as much from year to year as any of those listed, right? Edwards has improved a lot. Jefferson has improved a lot, but I think they both were operating from a plane of athleticism, of physical ability that was higher initially than Collier's was coming into the league. And what we have seen, and even Collier through becoming a mother, But also just watching the way that her game has developed and how she has gone from a very good young player to, hey, maybe she can be the, a 1 or 2 on a playoff level team, to now this year, you look at her and she is in the MVP discussion and just seems to have adapted her game to what it's going to take to be really successful there. Awesome. Like, she's been terrific. It's just like, does she have the Asia Wilson, that level in her? Does she have that level? Maybe she will. Maybe that's the continued ascendance. But I think you're right in terms of it. It doesn't look like she's quite to the elite of the elite level. Whereas Ant and Jefferson, and maybe even Royce Lewis, we'll see if he can stay healthy, but particularly Ant and Jefferson, both have already shown that in the right circumstances, they can be literally the best player on the court or field in big time games. And so that just gives them a slight edge. But I will say that Collier's ability to improve her game and her standing in the league over the course of her time in the league and through everything that she's gone through physically is as impressive as any of those in that group.
And Jefferson and Collier have this in common too. I don't think Cheryl Reeve thought she was drafting a star. I think she thought she was a nice player. And Collier has, and with help from Reeve, Collier has overachieved dramatically. Jefferson, as great as he is, as great as he was in college, he was a 22nd pick in the draft.
Yeah. Was there 21 teams, 3 or 4 receivers that went before him? Yeah.
Yeah. So they do have that in common. Both of them, it's easy to look at them now and say, oh, they're great. And of course they're great, but really they both have overachieved when you look at their draft stock.
So Jim, on this part on Jefferson,
yep.
What do you think it was? Do you think it was that Jefferson has sort of, when he came into the league and he was down at 22, has he improved over the last, let's just say over like the first 2 years of his career? Was it a case of him improving and doing things that he didn't do in college? Or was it the case that he was just overlooked, that he was just, that the scouts got it wrong on him more? Where I think, like with Collier, I think that the scout of her and what she did in college and where she fit in the hierarchy of her draft class, I think it was a pretty true kind of scout. Like, yeah, this is right where she belongs. And then good for her for like really just exceeding all of those expectations. With Jefferson, I feel like everything that we saw, like it was pretty early. We were like, oh, damn, like this guy can really go. And it felt to me at least like, hey, maybe we just underestimated in that regard a little bit more with Jefferson, that he always had those tools and that we just looked at Jamar Chase or we looked at Jalen Reagor, whatever, and said, that's it. What do you think on that for Jefferson in particular?
For Collier, I really do think she's just improved. She's improved dramatically year by year. Jefferson, I think he was a difficult evaluation because he was playing with a great quarterback and a great passing offense. They had other great receivers, and he has football athletic ability, not combine athletic ability. He is quick and fast in a way that Jerry Rice was quick and fast, not in the way that a track star is quick and fast. He might not be one of the fastest straight line runners in the NFL, but you have him using his wiggle to get open, and all of a sudden he looks like the fastest guy in the field, just like Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice is not brilliantly fast or big or that powerful, but he just knew how to play the game. He knew how to use his speed on the field. I think Jefferson is that guy. So I think Jefferson was overlooked, and I kind of get why he was. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I think that all makes sense. Certainly what I've come to appreciate maybe the most about Jefferson since he's got in. I mean, obviously he's got incredible hands. And and like you said, like understands the game. But like, I do think that he has a will about him, and a competitiveness that I didn't know about. Like, I wasn't sure, like, I watched the LSU games and stuff, but it's hard to see that, especially like you said, in that great offense where there's so many stars and they were just blowing people out. He seems to have that inner dog in him that says, I want to be the best ever. And so that's why he is such a technician. He studies the game. He understands all the little nuances and where to get those edges. And I just think that is what is separating him, or what I've come to appreciate from him, that I just had no way of knowing about coming into the league.
No, that's exactly right. A couple more topics we want to get to today. Again, subscribe to your favorite podcast app. We do appreciate it. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studios, and we want to thank Aquarius Home Services.
Scott for Aquarius Home Services. Making your life better is a huge priority for us at Aquarius. It may start with providing worry-free water or heating and cooling systems you can trust, but there's another very important reason. Aquarius is family-owned and operated. We work hard to earn the right to be recommended. That means upfront, no-surprise pricing, providing a 5-star experience, and treating your home and time with respect. And knowing we're just a click away at AquariusHomeservices.com.
Also want to thank TSR Injury Law, one of our longest running sponsors. Steve Terry is just a great guy to work with. In our dealings, we know he's a great guy and somebody you can trust, someone you like. So if you're ever injured, it's going to be the easiest thing you ever do. Call 612-TSR-TIME. He will take good care of you. They will take good care of you. They will not charge you unless they win your case, and they win lots of cases. 612-TSR-TIME. 612-TSR-TIME. Also want to thank my friend Scott Dayton, who has Twill in the Edina Galleria. Twill by Scott Dayton in the Edina Galleria. It's summer, so I'm wearing shorts, golf shirts. Occasionally I dress up. Sometimes I wear slacks or a jacket. Everything I'm wearing this time of year, I got at Twill. Of course, everything I wear during the winter, I got at Twill too, but it's even more obvious now because, I'm a sports writer. I don't really want to dress up, but I also don't want to look like a slob when I show up at a game. So I throw on like one of the Johnny O or Peter Millar shirts, Peter Millar golf shirts, the summer collection, the summer comfort collection. They look great and they feel like, they feel like as comfortable as a cotton t-shirt would feel. I can't recommend them highly enough. They've also added Samuelson, just great stuff. Just go to Twill in the Edina Galleria. Tell Scott we sent you. If Scott's not there, some really nice, relaxed people will be there. It'll be a great, relaxed shopping experience, and we do appreciate it. Tell them we sent you. All right, so what's best case scenario with Sam Darnold and the Vikings this year? And what I mean is, let's assume that J.J. McCarthy's not going to be ready on day one. Is it better for Darnold just to get him through a month and have McCarthy get as much experience as possible this year? Or is it actually good for the franchise if Darnold plays well enough to keep the job for a while?
For them to play him all year long, and for them to be in the playoff hunt and be competitive and really set sort of some like visual example for JJ McCarthy to see for an extended period of time that, hey, this is what works in this offense. And don't let me just learn about it in practice. Don't let me just watch it on film. Let me see it unfold in front of me with my own eyes in games and understand what works well and how to go about it. And maybe that also allows him to look at, hey, okay, here's what he does. Here's something that I do a little differently that I think actually might even take the ceiling higher on this offense. But I think that overall, if he starts 17 games and a playoff game or something like that, or even 17 and they're right in it, down to the last days, and gives McCarthy a full season to absorb, to learn, to just really soak everything in, that's to me the best case scenario. I don't necessarily feel great about putting a rookie quarterback in the middle of a season, because usually that means something went really wrong. Like, you're 1-5, it's just not working, let's change it up. and let's go that way. And so I would like the idea of a transition that is much more organic and natural in next offseason to say, hey, Sam, great job. Thanks. You did really well. Now it's time to pass the baton over, and we'll move on a la Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes, something like that.
I agree with you. And I also am not going to rule out, it's so easy to be negative about any quarterbacks who aren't like top 10 quarterbacks, because it's such a hard position. And we are always comparing every quarterback to the best in the game. There's a chance Sam Darnold plays well this year.
Yeah.
There's a chance that this is certainly going to be the best situation he's ever been in with, he's got Justin Jefferson. Hawkins will be back at some point. He's got Addison. He's got Aaron Jones, who was a big difference maker for the Packers last year. The offensive line, interior of the offensive line is still a work in progress, but the tackles are very good. They have good blocking tight end or two. There's a chance that, Darnold, with his experience, plays well for at least half a season. And if he plays well for half a season, then that at least buys McCarthy some time, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that the one thing I just don't want to see it happen to where it feels like you're making a change out of an emergency. Yep. Like that's, I don't think that's the way to go into it. Doesn't mean that it can't work out. I remember, Jim, Donovan McNabb and Christian Ponder, right? Like, yep. It was so clear that McNabb was cooked that even when Ponder came in and could just move around a little bit, you're like, maybe, but it was also clear that when Ponder went in, he was not ready for it. It was, let me just run like with a chicken with my head cut off and hope something happens that way. And that team was so desperate for, any kind of a spark that even, this overwhelmed kid coming in who never should have been drafted where he was drafted, doing something like that was viewed as kind of like, well, we kind of got to do it. We don't have any other choice. And so I hope that is not what happens with Sam Darnold, because I think it's possible, just like, let's look at his career to this point. It's possible that he just is not a starting quarterback in the league, and that he cannot, kind of come up with what is needed to move the offense. Now, here's, I think, one thing that we haven't really talked about, Jim, that is going to be an enormous part of this process is what are the Vikings' expectations as a team this season, right? Because you look at the division and you look at Chicago or Detroit and Green Bay for sure, and then maybe Chicago's improved. Are they going into this season saying our expectations are to be in the playoffs, or at least to make a playoff berth, or is it, what, we know we're a year away? We know we're not there yet. We've done some good things, both on defense with the roster, on offense with the roster. But given where we're at, we're going to be okay with 6 wins, 7 wins. And that, if that's the case, then you can let Darnold sort of take all of those lumps.
Yep.
But like, if you're desperate, like if you're like, no, we've got to be in there, and you're 1-3 or 1-4, that's immediately just going to start all of the angst and like the pressure of, shoot, do we throw the kid in there? Like, do we need to do this before we lose the season? Like, do they think this season is salvageable on the outskirts right now? That's what I don't know. And I think that's going to factor in hugely to what we see during the regular season with how they handle it.
And that'll be a really good topic for a future podcast. I'm going to wrap up this show with one memory. I remember Ponder, I think it was his first victory in Carolina. And, the team played just well enough to beat an okay Carolina team. And I remember walking around that locker room thinking, okay, Ponder got his first victory or whatever what scenario was. I should write about Ponder. Let me go talk to all of his teammates. And I remember standing in front of Steve Hutchinson, and just kind of asking 18 different ways, hey, why don't you say something nice about Christian Ponder? It was kind of what I was just giving him leading question after leading question. Hey, here's a way you can say something nice about Christian Ponder, and he would not do it. Everyone was like, well, we'll see. Yeah, it was a good team win. It's like he would not say anything nice about Christian Ponder. I should have read more into that.
Yes. I remember, like, I was not on the road with them that year. I was at AP at the time. But I do remember that spot in terms of, you mentioned Hutchinson. That was a guy who wanted to win at all costs at this stage of his career, that, was on a team that he had just had Brett Favre not long earlier, right? And was like, man, I went from Favre and Adrian and Sidney Rice at the top of his game, and like John Randall and all we had Hall of Famers everywhere, and we were in the NFC Championship game, to now we have Christian Ponder like just stumbling over himself in the huddle, and where are we going? And so one interesting thing I think about this roster in general is the lack of a lot of those. You have Harrison Smith, clearly, right, is in that camp of like older veteran guy trying to get the most out of his career at the end here. But the orneriness, I think, that Hutch brought to the table might not be there as much with the Garrett Bradburys and, and all of that ilk. Of course they're super competitive and they want to win and they're going to do all those things. But I think like the desperation of that might be a little different in that locker room and may help this whole situation a little bit more. And obviously it would be nice if JJ McCarthy was a little bit better than Christian Ponder and maybe a little bit more ready for something like this than he turned out to be.
Yes. I still remember people in the organization saying that everybody was afraid to talk to Steve Hutchinson until he had 2 coffees in the morning.
I was afraid after that. There's never a point that I wasn't afraid of going up to him and saying, "Hey, Hutch, you got a minute?" Yeah.
I do remember I did a piece on Jimmy Kleinsasser coming to the end of his career and getting ready to retire. And it was amazing how many first of all, Kleinsasser was great to talk to, which he hardly
one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But I remember that was like one of the only time Steve Hutchinson was like eager to talk.
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, it's about Jimmy." He's like, okay, we'll meet over there and we'll talk. And he was fantastic. It was like only Jimmy Kleinsasser would bring out Steve's talkative side, but he was a hell of a player.
So the lesson to be learned in this podcast, if you take anything away from the last 25 minutes of our conversation,
and why would you?
Jim Kleinsasser, Christian Ponder, slightly different in terms of the respect that they commanded in that locker room.
No doubt about that. Hey, good stuff, John. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks to Davide. We'll talk to you all next week.